Hello, everybody. Uh, Finally, we are live, online, broadcasted. I'm very happy that we are going to have this online webinar about board response on post-COVID. Very distinguished guests here, but from the very beginning, I will leave floor to Adele to start with the opening, and then we'll introduce our speakers and guests with questions. We are, as you see, live streamed on YouTube and Facebook, so you are more than welcome to also make questions, and we'll try to address your questions to our speakers and to our guests in the studio. Adele?
Hello, Visar. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you at this event because today we're going to discuss a very important topic, and I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers because today we have the speaker from the Netherlands, our long-term partner and friend, Erik Vermeulen, who is going to share with us a future of the corporate governance and digitalization and the overall global perspective on to what extent the role of corporate governance is changing. Today, we're going also to discuss business cases from Kosovo, from the country. And we would like to thank so much our speakers and looking forward to hear on how companies from Kosovo expressed resilience and went through the crisis, the prolonged crisis. So as for myself, my name is Adel. I am from Almaty, Kazakhstan. I am the team lead for the Integrated Environmental, Social and Corporate Governance Program for IFC in Europe and Central Asia. And by now I'm leading our operations in Kosovo, and I'm very happy. Although, unfortunately, due to travel restrictions, we cannot hold this event offline, which we usually do and prefer. But with this new format, we still are going to bring today a lot of very important questions. Why? Because today we're truly seeing a world of extremes. Certain sectors are collapsing, others are thriving. And we're able to see huge differences in how companies responded to the same challenges, and we're seeing differences in the extent of resilience. Most importantly, what we're seeing that companies that have managed to strategically pivot and do that on time have been weathering through the crisis more successfully. And one of the questions we will discuss is, where were the boards of directors? What did they do? Did they support the management, or were they slow in responding? I can tell you from our experience that we have been positively surprised by the level of support and the speed of turning into crisis mode by many of the boards. And admittedly, in February and March, we all hoped that the pandemic will wane soon, right? Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But rather quickly, most boards have stepped up, as well as the management of companies. And we have seen regular minimum, for example, monthly board meetings, close collaboration with management teams, and full transition into crisis mode with all hands on deck. Has it been perfect, and have the boards responded well when the disruptive event started? Well, most probably not. But have the boards met perhaps their biggest challenge of a prolonged crisis, ready to contribute? That's for sure yes, and yes for many, many companies. So moving to the question of what we have learned, there are several lessons indeed. We have learned that this pandemic is likely not a temporary phenomenon, unfortunately, and we will from now on would need to learn how to live in an operating environment even more vulnerable to business disruption. We see a completely changed way of doing business in developing and communicating companies which value to stakeholders. And we have faced the question, with the changed market assumptions, do we need to rethink this strategy? Another important question to ask is, to what extent the companies were ready to introduce the business continuity planning? Because as for many businesses, that exactly the issue have been one of those. We'll get to that when we have some breathing room items on the agenda during usual times. But now, of course, it's changing. And we think that if anything positive has come out of the crisis, so probably this is the recognition that planning for contingencies must be taken more seriously than it was before. Another question to ask, does the company have an emergency succession plan? And is it ready to be activated as soon as it's needed? Of course, for many companies actually failed to do that, even big and strong organizations, thinking that nothing can happen to key people that would disturb the business. Family businesses are particularly vulnerable in this regard, and the key people are often family members with concentrated powers and with little delegation. And this approach really needs to change if owners wish their businesses to succeed them. So, these are just some of the lessons learned so far, and we will delve into some of them in a more detail today with our distinguished speakers. But before going into our discussion, I also would like to share with you what IFC did and what was our role. So IFC have an enormous role to play, not just in providing emergency funding, which has been done by most international finance organizations, including IFC, but our role was also in analyzing the current situation and providing sound guidance on select topics and sectoral advice as well. We have issued a number of tip sheets. On one of those was about company leadership response to crisis in particular, in order to help companies with advice on various aspects of the crisis, but also sector studies to provide with the trends and learn from others' experience. And we have also been providing advice with regard to health and safety and environmental issues that companies are facing. Stakeholder engagement and proper communication is also another important topic today. And IFIs, international finance organizations and institutions, and other similar stakeholders have a huge role to play in sharing good practice in this area and supporting the private sector as a whole to weather those turbulent times. About IFC interim advices, dear colleagues, I would like to in particular show it to you, just a minute. And after the event, we will share the link to all those tip sheets. You may see that we have actually translated some of them into Albanian language for the convenience of use by the companies in Albania and Kosovo. So you will see that we have developed interim advices on the different topics. So for example, on supporting workers in the context of COVID-19, developing COVID emergency preparedness and response plan, that could be another very useful tip sheet for you, for many companies, as well as the one on preventing and managing health risks in the workplace. Despite the fact that the first wave of COVID has gone, we are facing or envisaged to face another wave of COVID. And we hope that those interim advices which IFC produced will help you to weather another storm in a more successful and strong way. And going back to one of the tip sheets on the leadership, company leadership on corporate governance, you may see that in the center of advice, we put the word resilience. And you will see that we are talking, of course, about the leadership and culture at the first place, because as we know, the tone should be set from the top. And this is important to remember that the key leaders of the company should communicate clearly and timely with the staff and with its key stakeholders. The business continuity planning is another very important area to work on immediately, but actually it should be done way in advance as we are discussing it now. Then emergency succession planning, as I mentioned, compliance function, it's also important, especially during the crisis. And another important new tools and mechanisms are crisis committee, which can be created, established in the company, or risk management committee can be strengthened with more functions on overseeing the impact of the crisis on the different aspects of the business. And of course, management crisis team, this is one of the first steps, again, in order to face the crisis and to deal with this. And as I said, after the event, we'll be happy to share with you those tip sheets. And if you would have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the IFC or our partnering organization, Recura. So in the conclusion, I would say that a lot has changed. And not so much due to desire, of course, but due to the need. Boards are more active nowadays. Management teams are in crisis mode. Planning is conducted on a short-term basis, and areas previously neglected by some have become center stage. For example, compliance, risk management, communications, and business continuity planning, etc. And all these are positive, should be at least considered as a positive outcomes. Because there has been a lot of criticism, if we talk about corporate governance, about shareholder board and management triangle, and a lot of tension in the system overall. Perhaps a rethink of roles is timely and will bring about positive change in how companies operate and how they affect other stakeholders. You will often hear these days of the importance of relevance and resilience. And the old way of leading the company, since consider it no longer probably conducive to growth, profit, or high share prices, as the customers are seeking nowadays the experience and values more than just a good product. So let's see what would happen next, but we should definitely remain positive, as in every adversity lies an opportunity, as we all know. So thank you so much once again. We're very happy to share our experience and our expertise. And please, if you have, again, any questions, reach out to us at any time. Visar, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Adel. Thank you very much for the presentation. And definitely you touched upon several aspects that we are going to discuss with our guests. Now, let me hear, because we missed informing again, though it was distributed via invitation. We have a CEO of ProCredit Bank Kosovo, Ms. Eriola Bibolli. Thank you very much for your time. And we have Deputy CEO of Viva Fresh Store, the largest retail chain in Kosovo, Mr. Korab Hoxha. It was planned to have also Mr. Visar from Kivo, and from Rex. He really just half an hour earlier apologized because due to the very unexpected circumstances he couldn't make it even physically because he's stuck to another country. But if he's watching us, I will use the opportunity to greet him too. And we have Mr. Erik from, sorry, help me here, Adel, because I missed the writing here, to whom we will give the floor now and have his first presentation. I would like to have just an opening from Erik, and then we can continue with a couple of questions for him. Or should you prefer to present questions to Erik immediately? Adel?
Yes. So, Erik, please, can you give us the overall overview of your own personal feelings, because you do represent an international company organization. You're the professor in the university. You do a lot. You write your own blog as well as run your own business, restaurant. So you have those multiple roles. So yes, I would like to propose for you to do the overview and your own introduction of your personal feelings. So how was the crisis? How was the pandemic from the business perspectives? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning. Yeah, I think we're all in the same time zone, kind of, but Adele is in the afternoon probably. But good morning, everybody. I think what Adele showed us was extremely important. But it looked at the pandemic as a risk, as a challenge, and of course it is a risk and it is a huge challenge. But I think there are some more lessons to be learned. It also created huge opportunities, and it also showed that we cannot predict the future. If you look at management teams, I was in a management meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they don't know where companies are going, where the business is going. They cannot predict where we will be in 5 or 10 years. And that means that management teams and leaders need help and need to think differently about the organization. Because again, there are a lot of opportunities and we have to make a lot of choices. So we were already, so I work at Philips Lighting, which is now called Signify, for a long time already. And if you look at the lighting industry, just as an example, I worked there for 25 years. And the last couple of years were the most hectic and challenging and created lots of new opportunities. Because if you look at a light bulb, and I don't have any light bulb here, otherwise I would show you. A light bulb is a very simple product. You just put it somewhere and then you turn on the light. And these things lasted for like, a light bulb lasts for 2-3 years. So for a long time, of course, we were improving the light bulbs, but it wasn't real innovation. And the business model was very simple. Nobody wants to sit in the dark. So whenever these things break down, people are replacing them. So it was a replacement model. But then we see that the light bulb is changing and it becomes an LED light. And an LED light, they last for 10 to 15 years. Now, if our business model was still waiting for these things to break down, we would be out of business very soon. And that's where things started to change. So all of a sudden, a light bulb lasted longer. We could do many more things. And consumers said, well, we don't want to buy a light bulb anymore. We want to buy light. And that means that we had to go from a product to a service, because now we offer light as a service. And we are responsible for the electricity, the light, and the maintenance and everything. And that brings us to the circular economy, because if we are the owner of the light bulb and we offer them as a service, then obviously we are more conscious about the quality, the environment, and everything matters. And then, of course, if we see light as a service, there are so many other things we can do. We can add sensors, we can connect them to other devices, we can collect data. And then this light bulb becomes a smart light bulb, which is connected to all kinds of other products. So for instance, my light bulbs here in my house in the Netherlands, they're all connected to my Wi-Fi. When my wife comes home at night, and she enters the Wi-Fi with her phone, the lights will turn green. So I know my wife is approaching, so I can clean up things and make things nice again. But this shows that the business model was changing. Then we got COVID-19. So this is like January this year. Then we got COVID-19. And I can tell you, if I would have told our CEO that UVC lamps, which are now used as a disinfectant, also in the coronavirus environment, he would have told me, no way, this will not be a big new product. But it happened. We see that the world changed. There was an opportunity and we had to move extremely fast. And when you have to move fast, your governance structure has to be completely different. So what you described as a kind of hierarchical pyramid structure, where you have the investors, you have the board of directors, you have the CEO, and they have all kind of other management levels, and then you have things that happen on the floor. That model cannot work anymore, period. So the leaders don't know where they are going. So what you have to come up with is a organizational structure that helps you figure out what is right for you. And I think that's what corporate governance is about. So if people ask me these days, what is corporate governance? I would not tell them it's a checks and balances system. I would not tell them, well, it's about risk management. I would tell them one thing. You don't know what's right for you now. You don't know where we are going. So corporate governance is helping you to create a system that figure out what's right for you now and in the future. And that system is continuously reinventing itself. And that means that you have to communicate differently. Your consumers will become part of your product and service development. Your employees become much more important. And that means you have to communicate clearly, you have to engage with them, you have to involve them. And there you see a lot of examples in the world of companies that actually change the whole governance structure in order to help management to figure out what's right for the company, because management cannot control the company anymore. They can only create a context in which all the other stakeholders co-create together. So to me, corporate governance is a co-creation model these days. Otherwise, no way that you can survive. Compliance, yes, important. But when you come up with too many of these guidelines, it becomes a box-ticking exercise, which is going to kill the whole organization. So there you have to be a bit careful as well. There are companies that now say, well, there's one main principle, which is a no rules principle. So you start with like no rules, you see how you can engage with the stakeholders, and then you use rules or guidelines to create a better system, not so much to have like compliance for the sake of compliance. That's what we see right now. And this is for the bigger companies, but also the smaller companies. You mentioned a restaurant. Well, yes, I am a co-owner of a restaurant, but my wife runs the restaurant. It's a family-owned, it's a second generation. But even there, the restaurant is closed right now because we are experiencing a kind of second lockdown. But there we use the first lockdown to reset the whole business, create new opportunities, look at the opportunities, and seriously, we involve the consumers now in our product. It's not anymore a restaurant where you go to and we serve food. It's a whole experience. So the whole world is going from product to service and now to providing an experience to consumers. And it doesn't matter whether you are in business to business or business to consumer. You have to understand what the experience for the end user is and how you can contribute. And that world is flatter. So your hierarchical structure becomes more like a flat hierarchy, less levels, more engagement. And now I will just throw some principles to you. It's a best idea wins culture. So it's not the highest paid person in the room that makes the decision. It's consumer engagement, it's stakeholder capitalism, it's about health, it's about change consumer behavior, it's about digital technology, it's about understanding technology. And that brings me to the board of directors, because you mentioned them. Well, I think it's extremely difficult for board of directors to immediately act. But there is some research out there that shows that companies that have a board of directors that focus more on giving advice are performing much better in crisis than companies that have a board of directors that only monitor and control. And I think that's where the board of directors is going to play a much more important role. It's assisting the company, helping management to find out what's right for them. And I give one quote from a business school professor from Switzerland, where he said, well, when you look at innovation within a company, it's not so much that board of directors are monitoring the innovation, they're actually contributing to the innovation of that company. And that's a completely different way of thinking about a board of directors. And also the board meetings will be different then. It's less about the board of directors listening to presentations done by leaders or managers. It's more having an open discussion with the managers about what's next. And there, the company can actually use the expertise of the board, particularly when they are independent and from other industries. Then they can listen to them, use that expertise to figure out what they have to do now and create new opportunities. Because I really believe that I hate the coronavirus crisis, obviously. Restaurants closed, lots of challenges, but I also see lots of opportunities to improve things, and we should not waste these opportunities. And I can continue forever, but I stop here because I can only see Adele. That's a bit of the problem now.
We are really getting used to, let's say, using these technologies and
oh no, it's
some
fine.
unknown.
It's fine. She's still awake, so she was listening. That's
used to. I mean, this is the compromise we are doing. So you can't see us, but everybody can see you. So everybody
Oh, that's
means
good.
quite broad view. It's live broadcasted on Facebook and YouTube, and it will be also recorded. So yeah, you will have chance to see us and hopefully even visit us. By the way, did you ever visit the region or Kosovo in past? You had chance to visit us for any reason,
No,
any case?
I haven't visited Kosovo.
Okay, so
recently.
we'll find the
Oh,
cause
I
and
will.
the way. Yeah. So now that we thank you very much for the presentation. Really, both you and Adele has touched upon very important issues and things that we were planning to discuss also with our guests. Now, if it's okay, I will continue with questions, and I'll start with Korab again to thank you for the time. I know that on these hectic times, and especially for your industry, and with a lot of responsibilities and a lot of, as we discussed even before starting this meeting, unpredicted measures by government, which are taken sometimes at 10 o'clock evening, you have to mainly respond rather than maybe innovate your business. But can you just touch upon this now, if we can say post-COVID period, because although it's still ongoing, I mean, we are aware of the impact on the retail and FMCG market. How was the response of the management of your corporate in even responding emergency, but also, if possible, as Erik mentioned, introducing new ideas and actions in running your business?
So, thank you, Mr. Visar. Because as all we know, this is the first time dealing with this COVID-19 situation. So, for sure, the impact was very big in the FMCG industry, and here in Kosovo was also, as we discussed before starting. So, the biggest problem that we deal in the very beginning of the COVID-19 was the decision making by the government. So most of the decision making, or more than 90% of the decision making, was taken by late night. So after 22 p.m. and with the immediate effect. So us as a biggest retailer here with 80 stores with more than 3,000 employees, so we need also the decision making during the night. So what we are going to do in the day tomorrow. So.
And how was that done? You had, let's say, did you gathered or had online meetings physically, or online, just passing emails and phone calls?
No, usually online meeting, because also we get the information from the news. So this is also the worst or the more problem, because everything would be informed by the news what we saw. So the problem was how to take a decision in the morning, because you need to inform all of these 3,000 employees what you are going to do tomorrow. So this decision making had a very big impact also, because the decision was to restrict the moving, the working hours, and less working hours for the stores. It means more big frequency during the end of the working hours. So that was also hard for the employees, because they start to be afraid of visiting of too many people during the same time. And for sure that increased also more management meetings together, that how we are going to respond of this decision making. Also more discussion in this meeting. It was also on the stock with because most of the suppliers they had also the same problems, restriction of the moving, so less stock in the stores. So So this was more issues and discussion during these days in the beginning. So we had a little bit more space to see and to improve what we are going to do in the future. So for sure we made some decisions also how we are going to deal in the future after the first day of the pandemics are going to be.
So you discussed also that there are now going to be like general changes.
Yes.
Nothing will be like it used to be, right?
Yes, for sure. So usually we saw in the Euro because everything happens before there, so we're a little bit informed what is going on there. But only these changes with our problems in Kosovo was these more about the decision making of the government had a very big impact to the FMCG in this retail industry.
Thank you very much, Korab. We'll get back with a few more questions that I've prepared, and I'm trying to see also whether also someone from the auditorium will make any particular questions to you. Eriola, again, thank you very much for your time. I can assume it's between most probably also other board meetings apart from the operations that you deal. Again, ProCredit is the lead bank here, not only with size but also with innovation. So I'll immediately not jump to the response, but to the innovations for which ProCredit Bank is well known, and as every sector is touched with a new situation, which by some opens new opportunities. Now, how ProCredit and your bank looks on innovations caused by post-COVID crisis to address new challenges.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Visar. It's an interesting mini ecosystem, I would say, and it's an interesting subject to discuss. I'm pleased to share ideas, experiences, and reflections with partners. IFC, it's by coincidence a shareholder and a partner. Viva Fresh, it's a customer and a partner. Recura, it's a customer and a partner. So there is no better place to be to discuss in this partnership relation the way we cope to the challenges and the way we see the future forward. At the same time, I took with a great pleasure the invitation because after months of action and months of active movement, there was very little time to reflect. And I took precisely this moment of this discussion to engage in another level of thinking about the way we coped, why things worked the way they did, and then what would be the impact and the message for the future. And it's no coincidence that we talk about corporate governance at the end, why corporate governance is mentioned and discussed in the middle of the crisis, because there are very clear outcomes and there is a direct correlation between a good corporate governance and the performance, the sustainable performance of any company in the longer term. And then what makes then the good corporate governance and what makes it important in times of crisis. And I hope we will address some of these issues today and telling what worked in our case. It is important in addition to mention that I represent the banking sector, and by definition banking sector is heavily regulated. Corporate governance structures are defined by law, and there is a very simple reason for that. First, given the sensitive nature of the banking sector and the aim to preserve financial stability, banks need to be as resilient, as sustainable, as soundly managed as possible. And in addition to all the thinking and the prudence that comes from the companies, from the banks themselves, the regulators always intervene and want to be on the safe side by providing rules of corporate governance. So banking is one of the most advanced sectors when it comes to having built structures that at the end would provide some resilience. Before talking about the innovation in our institution, I would like to, it's inevitable not to mention the response about the crisis, because there are two ways you cope with this situation. It's how do you deal with today, with tomorrow, with a very short term, and then inevitably you start thinking what would be the impact in the medium to longer term, and what's the forward-thinking perspective in a post-pandemic situation. And starting with the short term, there are two aspects of dealing with it, the way we dealt with it, what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, and they are different things. And similarly to what the other speakers mentioned, I would perhaps repeat or reinforce some of the messages, that the most important element in dealing with the crisis was people, the safety of our staff, and immediately, overnight almost, we had to take fast decisions to enable work from home. I cannot say that in any of the worst case scenarios we were prepared to buy over 200 laptops and to send all the staff at home with VPN connection. Even in my nightmare dreams, it was never ever came across as a scenario, but at the end it had to be done. And you had to ensure that health, safety, a proper working environment needed to be established rather fast. And at the same time, the business continuity plan needed to be activated with some caveats I'll mention later when we talk about risks and the way we think of risks. But that was very, very important. Another element that had to change immediately was information, because the quantity of information needed was immense, the quality sometimes being there, sometimes lacking, and the frequency of exchanging information with all different stakeholders increased. Then we relied a lot not just on internal information, but we were very much dependent on external information from the government measures, then assessing competitors and so on. So a robust architecture of information and understanding the importance of information made a very important step in the way we coped with the crisis. In addition, I would say that the last aspect that was fundamentally important was the customers. And it was important to assess how fit is our business model, how fit are our services and products to serve customers in the new environment. And this is exactly the connection to your question. We were in a way visionary enough, I would sense, that we had already sensed the paradigm shift when it comes to modern digital online banking services. And years ago, having a clear vision and having a clear modern business model, we had already started to align the bank towards innovation and towards digital online services. And at the start of the crisis, I can say that we found ourselves in a very advantageous position to be able to offer customers uninterrupted services without compromises health and safety standards. Aspects that we did not see, for example, going very well in other competitor banks, because they had to serve customers in queues, in proximity without sufficient distance, or even customers were conditioned to go and visit the branches, while we had the advantage of having the possibility to offer the services from their, in a way, homes. So I can say that with the possibilities that the technology offered, yes, banks have already adopted innovation. And what I can say is that nowadays, for example, our technology and the infrastructure to offer customer services no longer sits with us in the branches or with thousands of people, but now it is in the hands of customers. And this is a very important shift and innovation that we have made it possible. So the front-end technology sits in the laptops and in the mobiles of the customers. And the same more or less goes true for the back end. In the back end, we no longer have servers localized in our given environments, but our data is stored in the cloud. And having adapted fast enough the advantages given by technology, I have to say that we did not experience major interruptions. We simply had to accelerate already the advantages of fast, modern digital technology we already had deployed in the company, and at the same time we had to adapt as well. So overall, for me, it is not important just to outline the measures that we took and how resilient we were. But in the context of this discussion, it is very important to mention what was the role of corporate governance in providing us the continuity of operations, the safety of staff, and achieving business growth in the pandemic times with minimum resources, because we had around 20% of staff staying at home without being able to contribute to the company to be integrated to the new setup. So it is perhaps the time to mention that yes, it is important for companies, for institutions to have clear visions and business model and modern business model, and even in times of crisis, when you prepare your response, you are loyal to your own business model and to your own principles. What is important in my business? It is the customer. What is important in my business? It is the people who work for me. And you want the customer to get the best in the current circumstances, and you want all the people, you want everybody in the company on board and with maximum effort and contribution in order to ensure the success. At the same time, I have to mention that yes, we are this kind of institution that decision making is relatively clear, and we are always governed by sets of rules, practices, a number of meetings and committees, and we already come up with this experience, and very fast we created ad hoc crisis committees that had to take care of the developments, stay close to people. Employees needed to respond, whom to contact in case of infection, in case of relative infection, what to do if a certain unexpected situation happens, and so on. So coming with such an architecture of these components that I mentioned, having a clear model and a clear vision, having sufficient rules and practices and clear decision-making structures which had the ability to mobilize ad hoc, and having already high-quality people, it made it work in the current situation. And last, not to take longer than the time budget for my contribution, what was the role of the board in this discussion, in these developments? I have to say that the primary response and the operational plans, they came from the management. However, the board played an important contribution simply by being present. And the board of directors, even in our case, they are in a servicing duty engagement. So they were present. Frequent contacts happen in all forms, phone calls, short emails, then formal meetings continued with different agendas, of course. But the way they helped, in particular me and the management board team, first of all, the board provides support because in times of crisis, you tend to lose the perspective. It's a paralysis, sometimes it's a shock, and there are weeks or days that you don't move, you do nothing, unless you understand and digest what is going on. And in our board, we have experienced members and bankers who have seen different markets, different shock events in all different contexts, and their experience helped very much. And the fact that they stood up and they were present and in touch with us was very, very thankful from our side. At the same time, the board supported very much with the decision making, because we, in times of crisis, during the response, we had to take very, very fast decisions being made ad hoc and overnight. And you need the backing of the board that yes, these decisions are vital to be made, and they need to understand it and to support you in this decision making. And correlated with the decision making, it's the component of trade-offs, because in terms of crisis, as management, you are facing trade-offs. For example, what do I mean by trade-offs? Shall we send all the employees at home and we continue paying all the employees 20% of staff without contributing to work? And that was a unanimous decision in the board. Yes, we sustain all the staff and then we pay the salaries regardless whether they are able to contribute or not. Or do we finance, do we lend to customers who are in moratoria? Is it the right thing to do or not? Or do we distribute dividends? It's another major discussion which fits very well in the framework of the corporate governance. So you face trade-offs in the decision making and in the very fast decision making. So in these regards, I have to say that sharing this burden with the board and feeling the presence and the support of the board helped us continue our response path forward. And thankfully, we managed the first wave of the crisis management extremely well, not just with survival, but I'm happy to say that with growing, increased business results.
Thank you very much, Eriola. And now I'm even more happy that we are really recording this, and we'll have to, at least I can get back to what Erik has presented, and Adele and Korab, and now you, Eriola, because I think it's very valuable also now for me, because I'm all in an everyday, let's say, position to promote good corporate governance, and the reason why. And on the other side, it will be very valuable also for others to watch. I will get back to you with a couple of few other questions on some different aspects, and I have also questions from Facebook. But Erik, are you still with us? Great, I can see it. Okay, so yes, I would like to ask you a question, if possible. Yes, Adele, do you want to? I wanted just to pass a question to Erik in the context of, let's say, middle-sized companies in Kosovo, any kind of advice, let's say, in an emerging market like Kosovo, with regard to let's say, digital economy. What would be your advices on how to refresh business and remain relevant nowadays for emerging markets like Kosovo, also with the new challenges caused by these type of crises, and in global trends of digital economy?
Yes, so thank you very much. I think I understood the question. I think my advice is basically what the previous speaker mentioned, that when you think about your organization and your organizational structure, and you can call it corporate governance, I think what she mentioned many times was the word people. It's about people, it's about your employees, it's about the consumers, and they are experience difficult times, and you have to somehow provide a workspace or a service to them that they can use, and they have to be they want to be engaged, they have to be taken seriously, and that's where communication plays an extremely important role. So again, I think for companies in Kosovo, small and medium-sized companies, it's particularly thinking, when you think about corporate governance, don't think too much in terms of hierarchical control structures like Adele mentioned. They are kind of disappearing, and think more about how can I engage with my consumers, how can I engage with all other stakeholders that are important. This could also be the government, actually, because if you look at banks, we were discussing a bank now, there's a lot of financial technology going on. Not everything is regulated. So also there, the bank has to think together with government, together with regulators, together with consumers, how to deal with certain opportunities and challenges. And I think, to me, the key word here is co-creation. And you have to have a co-creation mindset everywhere. You cannot deal with all these challenges alone. You have to work together with partners, and again, with your consumers, with your employees. You want to retain talent. If you want to attract people that work for you, but that you should be an accelerant to them, meaning that you have to help them build their career. It's a completely different world. In the past, when you would employ somebody, you would train him, and then the thing was to keep that employee as long as possible within your organization. That might not be the case anymore. So you have to give them also more freedom. And basically your company becomes an ecosystem where co-creation is the most important thing. So it's a mindset shift. And the people that are on the panel now, particularly the bank, I think they got it already before the crisis, that it's about technology, it's about offering consumers a service that they want, it's about engagement. And when you understand that and you have that mindset within your organization, you will be okay. Yes, you will have challenges, but you are able to move fast and react quickly. If you have a very old-fashioned organization that still thinks in terms of control, it will take a long time before you actually can make the shift. And then you might not be relevant anymore in the future because of technology, the exponential growth of technology, and crises that happen that we see these days. So I think right now, if we look at 2021, it will be ugly for some companies that are still surviving because of all kinds of support they get, but might be in trouble because they didn't move fast enough. And it will create lots of opportunities for the companies that actually have a more flexible structure, engage more with the consumers and the employees, and have a people organization instead of a only profit-making organization. Money is important, it's the fuel, but you have to be a people organization these days in order to survive. And I think the panelists mentioned similar things. It's about people, and how can you give them the feeling that you take them seriously. That's the most important thing managers can do these days.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Erik, very much on interesting points that you've mentioned. Korab, can I ask you on another aspect, very important, which is also caused by the situation, and it's as a member of association that employs, first of all, as one of the largest employers in Kosovo, but also as a member of the association that employs significant number of employees. How did you address the social impact of the post-COVID crisis, and where do you see the challenges in near future? Did it also increase the cooperation with other members, or somehow you're kind of left alone? And what is your thoughts and your impressions and also results of this post-COVID crisis when it comes to social impact, mainly on your employees?
Yes, of course, this crisis increased the cooperation between us and the association and all our members, of course, with many more frequent meeting with them, and to see how we are going to face the problems in this industry. So we did research with one project with I that we did, and the association, and which is going to be very, very fast published for all the members, and of course for the public, to where are the problems in the industry. Us as a biggest retailer here, we see. Also, the same problem we have also in the association. The biggest problem that we see are the employees, the staff problems. So how we are going to monitor them, the performance, how we are going to recruit the right talents, because now the people are more afraid to work in our industry because of that we are in the front of too many people, too many visiting during the day. So it's very hard to find the right talents and employees. Also, other problem that we are facing, and we are seeing how to push more to employees to be more with the problem of new rules, masks, and distance,
health and safety.
Health and safety. So usually with these rules of too many people at the same time, it makes more difficult also for the employees for 8 hours to wear the mask, and in front of too many people to keep the distance. So these are some of the fields that we are seeing with the association, that how we are going to develop. Of course, in the report are also some other topics which we are preparing to publish. I will not do
Okay, so it's a good announcement also.
Yes, it's going to be very interesting to. It is very interesting report for the FMCG. This retail industry.
So we look forward to it. Eriola, can I ask, I would like also to direct now on the other side a question also of aspects of corporate governance. Yes, we discussed at least once before in an official meeting in something which concerns us as a consultant, but I think also the market, and we believe that it should or could concern also the bank. What do you think, what would be the impact of good governance principles of clients in that an increase of the level of good governance in lending market could possibly positively address the impact of post-COVID effects, and in which main areas you would see?
I would relate to what I said at the beginning. What are the expected outcomes of corporate governance before we discuss the importance for customers? We see corporate governance as a fundamental pillar in terms of helping the companies create long-term sustainability and performance. And this is, as a lender, we are very much interested in this aspect being taken seriously and delivered by the customers we choose to support and to work in partnership. So among other aspects, we very much support our customers towards establishing and incorporating corporate governance for the simple reasons that we discussed today. We see that now entrepreneurship skills, people soft skills, and corporate governance aspects in general, covering all up, are very important to not just providing resilience under shock and difficult times, but above all, one of the big questions that in every customer we assess is what is the impact of such a crisis in their business model. And every customer should ask this question. And there are opportunities and risks coming with the impact. And in order to have a sober, more analytical view on what is going on, as much as you can, because not all the questions can find answers today, it is very important for customers to understand that they need to incorporate diverse perspectives. It is not enough just to rely on the old stories, on the old narratives and what is familiar to them, because we see customers changing behaviors, we see technology opening new opportunities. In the COVID time, we see supply channels being disrupted and reconfigured, and sometimes taking the view from the employees, for example, if you assess the impact of the of COVID in your business model, it's important because they are sitting in the front line. They are in direct interaction with the customer, and it's important the input they bring to this discussion. At the same time, having independent boards or independent partners bringing a fresh perspective, a different mindset from what is familiar to the business, not just different, but independent, for me it's important, because sometimes when businesses are even family businesses, it's a lot of vested interest, it's a lot of emotional connection with the company, and independence is blurred. And in difficult times like this, you need an independent perspective on this impact assessment that we want to be done nearly from everyone, on what new opportunities are arising and how to quickly embark on them, but what are the open risks that you have to be aware of and then try to control if possible. So being open to these kind of structures, being open to new fresh ideas and to new mindsets, I think it will be fundamentally important in a post-COVID environment, because we'll see perhaps a filtering of the market as well. The companies who are able to develop or to show entrepreneurship skills and embark on new ideas quickly, switch to new channels, adapt to new technologies, sense customer shifting preferences faster, would be surviving. And at the same time, they would need the right people to do that, and they will need the right insights and information and perspectives in order to fuel it further. So we definitely support these particular aspects, and a solid corporate governance, as Erik already mentioned before. It's not just about the bureaucratic organizational setup with a lot of checklists and a lot of heavy structures. It's about simply mindful, creative, analytical, and intelligent assessments of the given environment, focus on the opportunities, awareness on the risks, and then the right people and the information and the structures to move forward.
Thank you very much. So I have a couple of questions also from people who are watching us. Thank you, Indira, for questions. One is for Erik, one is for Eriola. But before that, Adele, is there anything you would like to add or ask questions either to our guests or to add and complement upon presentations that we heard?
Thank you, Visar. I think everything is going very well, and thank you so much once again to our distinguished speakers. The only thing I would propose to discuss, and in particular the questions to Erik, in maybe to elaborate a bit more on the digitalization of the business, and in particular the corporate governance aspect of the digitalization. Erik, can you please tell us more and share maybe your expertise and experience in that sense? Because we all have seen that nowadays every company learned how to work remotely, and maybe there are any new solutions in order to make business more resilient and mobile during these challenging times. Thank you.
Okay, you want me to answer now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very interesting and difficult question at the same time. When we talk about digitalization, there are a couple of things going on. One was already mentioned. We see a lot of innovation and a lot of digitalization in the products and services that we provide. So if you look at, again, the lighting company that I mentioned, we are not a lighting company anymore. We are more and more a data analytics company. I think supermarkets become more and more data analytics company. So that's one part of it. And corporate governance is important there, because it's you need to have people that actually understand the digitalization. So you need to have digitally savvy people on the board. You need to have digitally savvy people in management. Otherwise, they are just not going to understand what the business is about. So a banker these days should also understand the digital. So that's one part of it. We discussed this. But there's something else going on where some people believe that the organizations as we know it right now might be disrupted because of blockchain, artificial intelligence. And that could mean that we see more and more decentralized structures that don't operate as companies as we know it, but as a group of people working together and being basically managed by technology. So in the gaming industry, you see a lot of these examples. You see what is called a decentralized organization of game developers working together, organized in a blockchain environment without actually having the managers, etc., as we know it. That's a trend that's still far away. So I don't want to discuss it as something that is important right now for the businesses in the Netherlands or in Kosovo or in Kazakhstan. But it's also something that we should not ignore either. That's why I look at the gaming industry a lot these days, because the gaming industry, you see very active and loyal communities. You see that the larger corporations within, they don't survive. You see more and more that game developers are setting up their own entities, which are closer to the market, where they communicate directly to the market and engage with them. And then, of course, technology can play an extremely important role, because then you get data analytics, maybe blockchain, that can help you make the company flatter and move much faster than they did before. So in Georgia, you have the mobile bank. I think mobile banks were discussed, but you see I think the Central Bank of Georgia setting up a subsidiary Space, which is a mobile bank only, actually to disrupt the bank itself. You see within supply chain was mentioned as well, that technology is being looked at to disrupt the old models we have. I am part of a emerging tech and corporate governance group in the UK, set up by the Institute of Directors. So yeah, more and more people are looking at how data analytics will drive decision making. Some companies are experimenting with artificial intelligence on the board, not to replace people, but to help them. So lots of things in corporate governance are being affected by digital. So to sum up, one, because the products, services that we offer are becoming more digital. So that means we need to have more digital people, but we also see that digital technologies that themselves are going to be used to organize a company and to structure the company. And that would mean a complete change and disruption of corporate governance as we know it. But then you should have, there are some people that have very strong beliefs in this, but that's a completely different panel discussion, where they think that, in the future, the company as we know them right now, and I wrote about this, I called it the end of the corporation, where the corporations as we know them might actually be disrupted, and we might see some more like ecosystems emerging that are managed by the crowd itself, with the help of technology. And it's not that far away. If you look at the encyclopedia and Wikipedia, I think that's a very good example. I'm old enough to understand and still know what an encyclopedia is. If I ask my students, they will probably not know, but everybody will know Wikipedia. And basically that's managed and organized by the crowd. And we will see more and more of these structures. But I think that's a different discussion with that we should have in a different environment.
Thank you very much, Erik.
Perhaps, Visar, I can bring some more practical aspects of digitalization in the sense of what we have done in concrete terms. For example, we have pushed very much forward contactless services in the given pandemic situation, and we have already offered a lot of possibilities that customers would do services online and use contactless cards and services. Secondary, e-commerce is on a rise, and in Kosovo we have already accelerated the push of incorporation of e-commerce platforms to a number of companies that could do sales online, and we see it as an emerging trend, and many businesses should switch and adapt fast to it. With a number of retailers, we are discussing fast self-checkouts, for example, which would reduce their dependence on physical cashiers. If we can have technology that the customer can do shopping and then can quickly simply scan the products and pay online without the assistance of a cashier, this would be very much a tool that would help them simply minimize the staff issues that they have with a presence in their cash desks. And at the same time, we are trying to deploy electronic signing, digital signature solutions in order to facilitate contract signing and agreement signing online. As I said, technology now is pushing all the services in the hands of the customer. And this is a very big shift, that the faster you adapt and catch up into this digital model, the more resilient and successful you are expected to be. And I'm happy that our bank is a front runner in this regard. But even on the back end, you have today outlining the infrastructure and the protocols of your company with Microsoft Office 365, for example, and with Teams. You can have meetings, you can record meetings, you can record decision making, you can easily follow up and document all the decisions and the follow-up items. At the same time, with SharePoint technology, Adobe technology, you can outline the internal signing of documents completely online without the necessity to bring people physically in the company to do physical signatures, for example. And this all supports aspects of corporate governance in the sense of transparency, ethical, operational risk management, which are not necessarily innovative in the sense of customer front-end engagement, but in the sense of the resilience and the governance and the control environments. They are still important, especially in a sector that I come from. And technology offers a lot nowadays, and all the items that I outlined are more or less reality in Kosovo and in my institution today. And this is why I said that I was perhaps one of the lucky companies to say that we simply had to accelerate what we had already started to deploy, and we simply had to adapt without a major disruption. And this is a good example, I think, to provide to all the listeners and the viewers.
Definitely, definitely. Korab, on the same topic, any, let's say, innovative, new, faster approach on using all digitalization aspects on retail, though it's maybe another industry, it's very much interrelated and connected to what is usually said, experience buying, that you have to provide physically in shops. But did you, in your sector or in your company, experience, let's say, the faster movement or development of any aspect of digitalization, whether it's within a company or in the correlation with your client?
So still in our industry here in Kosovo, it's very small and very expensive approach to start with digitalization or with checkouts without employees. We are seeing.
You thinking on that?
Yes, we are thinking on that, and we did many analyses to get approach, but still we think that still we have very simple request. The people still wants to put articles in the bags. So imagine if you order them to pay themselves in the self checkouts. We are seeing innovation in the retail industry, how it's developing in the US mostly, but still also in the Europe is very small. It's increasing for sure every day, but here we think that we need more time to start to develop these changes in this industry. Still, our paying with the cards is very small. So usually they want to pay with cash in the checkouts, So it is around still, it's only 15% of our transactions are passing by card. So 85% of transactions are still cash. And this makes more difficult by thinking of changing and going on that. But for sure, in the future, we don't have other choice. Also, we are going to go in the same line of digitalization and self checkouts in the retail.
It may be linked and related what we've discussed with some aspect of what Erik mentioned is related, but at least from my side, last question, though it's going to be at least one question from Facebook for you, Eriola. Any regulatory changes due to the crisis or any expected or required in this context?
There is no straightforward answer to this question. I have to say that the shock we are undergoing now, it is an exogenous shock for the financial sector, for the banking sector. The origin of the shock is outside. It's a health situation, then a hibernating economy which poses risks on the private sector, households, and then the banking sector simply has to cope with the implications. So in addition, I have to say that the financial sector worldwide has already emerged out of a very strong financial crisis, which was endogenous, differently from this one, with many reasons and triggers originating from the inside of the system. And in the aftermath of the financial crisis of the years 2007, 2008, a number of regulatory changes emerged in the context of Basel III and now Basel IV developments. Then a number of qualitative aspects on the way of applying the fit and proper criteria of the board member compositions, on the diversity of the board, on the level of expertise and so on. They were all touched and they were all addressed. So how the overall regulatory framework would evolve, I think for the financial sector, I don't see the necessity of a major turnaround or a shift. However, adaptations always need to be made in the sense that first, I think the regulators have to put more emphasis on the assumptions of the stress test, because one of the aspects of dealing with the risks, we talked about opportunities, but we did not touch risks, and they are important in the banking, in the financial industry, that the assumptions under which you produce the stress test have to be revised, because natural disasters, climate, environmental factors are not sufficiently incorporated under the stress test scenarios. Secondly, the mindset of risk and the thinking on the regulatory framework will change towards scenarios. A lot of scenario thinking is happening under uncertainty nowadays, and that was not perhaps sufficiently covered in the past. There are new risks. There is a lot of focus now on new risks emerging, which are temporary risks, but they might evolve in the longer term. Focus on how to zoom in and control cyber risks, information security risks, data protection, GDPR. It's a big issue because with the new setup, with all the staff working with a laptop from home, a number of these issues now are becoming increasingly relevant and on top of our risk assessment impact. So yes, I expect adaptations and a minor evolution in the regulatory framework post-COVID, but not to the same magnitude that we saw it in the aftermath of the financial crisis, because the entire framework was already revised then. A number of liquidity capital buffers have been already created in the system in order to absorb similar shocks and to create resilience, and they are there. So the banking sector, the financial sector in Kosovo and worldwide was in a much better position to accommodate the impact of these shocks. And as I said earlier, the origin of the shock is not coming from inside the system, it's coming outside. The question is how resilient and robust is the system, which I think to a certain degree it is, Now, how long the challenges will last, this will be seen, and perhaps other risks would emerge. We have seen different features of credit risk management nowadays. We see expected credit loss models and calibrations being revised after being tested with such a big shock. IFRS 9, for example, is in place since 2018, and now it was tested with a very big shock, with an incredible magnitude. And then I assess calibration of such models would be absolutely necessary to be revised, and regulators would take steps in that. But last, and BCP, of course, would be in the focus of the regulators, in the sense it's there, it's a requirement, BCP succession planning. But the emphasis, I think, would be put on now the quality and not just on the checklist, because as a checklist, it's there, but how effectively it is put in place, and people would make the difference. The quality of the board members and of the management teams will make the difference, as always. And BCPs should be exercised, they shall be believed, they shall be seen as a supportive tool and not just a paper, a checklist that needs to be there in the drawer because of compliance reasons, but because of a fundamental tool of the business continuity and of the business operations. So apart from the fine-tuning, simply the way corporate governance is lived, the intangibles, the quality that people bring into the system would be always critically important.
Thank you very much, Eriola. I have, as I mentioned, a few questions from people who are watching us. Indira has two questions. Thank you very much, Indira, by the way, for questions, because it just reminded us that this program is also about environment and social, and we really were digging a lot, if not only, but mainly on corporate governance. So, question for Erik. Considering that the government of Kosovo is nowhere with aligning their climate-related policies to the UN agendas, how do we shift the CSR mindset to value creation and regenerative economy, to circular economy? Was it clear, too complex? Do you need to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it.
Thank you.
I think I got it. Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. It's a very interesting question. And I think here, according to me, many people make a kind of mistake when you start to separate things. So I think in the past, like 5 to 10 years ago, CSR, sustainability, corporate responsibility, climate change, it was all viewed as something separate, and it was a separate group within the company was working on it. And yeah, then they came out with reports, and specialists started to ask some questions. I think these days, the whole sustainability, and then I don't talk about CSR, but just sustainability, climate change. That's all part of the product and the service that you provide to the market. So the consumer wants to know where the product is coming from. The consumer wants to know whether it's sustainable. The consumer wants to see that the company takes climate change seriously. So this becomes a real part of the product service that you provide. So my company, they are carbon neutral now, and that was all over. Let's say they announced it, they communicated it, and then you see a lot of positive reactions from the consumer, from regulators, from the investors. So everybody, it's in everybody's mind these days. You can just not ignore it anymore. It's part of your product, and that means that when you set up your governance structure, again, it's about co-creation, taking into account the digital technology and the digital transformation, taking into account health and well-being, particularly now in COVID, everybody is thinking about it, taking into account diversity and inclusion, that's becoming extremely important, taking into account sustainability. So it's as a manager, it's extremely complicated. And I think one of the best citations I have is from Satya Nadella. He is the CEO of Microsoft, where he said, well, in the past, as a manager or as a leader, you were thinking about the interest of the investor particularly. But these days, you cannot do that anymore. It's about all the stakeholders, all the time, simultaneously. And a lot of my colleagues, academic colleagues, they say, well, it's impossible for a company to do this. It's impossible for a manager to think about all the stakeholders all the time simultaneously. But that's what we all discussed here. And I think the examples of the other panelists say the same thing. As a man, you are not a manager thinking about the stakeholders. You are a manager creating a system where all the stakeholders play an extremely important role. And sustainability is just one thing that is so important that it's on top of everybody's agenda, and it has become part of the product, of the service that you provide. So again, it's moving from and this is a huge discussion in corporate governance land these days, from a profit-oriented organization to a purpose-oriented organization. I think that's what this is all about. And every leader, every board member has to understand this, has to understand that sustainability is just a very important component of everything we do. And when you take this seriously, you will attract the right consumers and you will attract the right employees.
Thank you very much, Erik. I hope Indira is satisfied with the question. And you very much linked to and touched on another question that Indira has put to Eriola, and it's very related to what you've presented. So I'll read it as it was put. Eriola, congrats on your work. Any chance for ProCredit to join other international banks exiting sin industries, such as coal? Very punctual, precise question.
Very interesting. Thank you for the question. Before I answer the question, I have to very much support what Erik said, and I'm very pleased that he concluded more or less his input with the statements he made, because I think if there is an evolution of the corporate governance system, it is precisely moving forward from a shareholder-centered corporate governance system, which was dominating the world in the 90s, to a stakeholder corporate governance systems. And the interaction between the businesses and the community is becoming increasingly symbiotic and important. And in the company I work for, in our bank, we pay a very high importance to that. And it is a part of our DNA on the way we work. How do we create value through our business model in a resource-constrained environment? And this is already not just a statement, but we have already taken concrete steps in the way, in a three-pillar system that is already incorporated and implemented in the bank, in the sense, how do we allocate capital to developmental sectors and to green and eco-friendly sectors. And as a result, we have already a commitment to have 20% of our loan book in renewable energy or energy efficiency projects at minimum and more. And if there is a front runner in this regards, it has to be us in our market. At the same time, our group has already taken the decision to move away from financing single-use plastic. Today, we do not provide credit to any company who is engaged in single-use plastic, who does engage in harmful activities like extraction, coal, and so on. Simply, we will no longer finance that. What we are financing, it is renewable energy projects, a lot of PV projects in Kosovo. We are supporting the SME business community and the household to install PV panels in order to produce clean energy for their own consumption, and if they have a surplus, let them sell it. And this is the future and the direction that we support, and we have a strong mechanism that we decide how to allocate credit to precisely these sectors. So to answer that, yes, we are very strongly supporting an environmentally friendly loan book and financing activities, and by no means we are financing or providing credit not just to harmful activities, but even to companies who simply do not engage enough in renewable energies and in environmental friendly practices. And secondary, it's an important pillar, is what we do ourselves as a consumer. And in order to be carbon neutral, we have already taken a decision with our shareholder to invest in a 3 megawatt PV power plant in Kosovo. It is the first investment of the type. It is non-for-profit. Simply, it is a commitment from our shareholder and from us in order to be carbon neutral and to be one of the first right examples and a positive footprint in the green energy environment in Kosovo. Then we have already changed our procurement policies. We do not select any vendors or contractors who are not engaged in environmental protection. We want to see the origin, the certification of the goods they produced. If they have already harmed the environment and if they do not represent sufficiently the green certificates, simply we will not select them. We will not choose them. We are the only institution in the country to have a 100% car fleet of hybrid and electric vehicles. We don't have a single vehicle diesel since 2 years. We have gotten rid of any plastic. We use recycled paper. And of course, we provide the right awareness to our staff and to our customers that living together in a resource-constrained environment, it's a joint task. We have to give our example as an institution, as a consumer, and as a lender, and jointly, together with the community, with our staff and with our customers, we'll try to redirect our actions and our efforts towards a greener and more environmental friendly future.
Thank you, Eriola, and very good examples to follow, if I may say, not only from the bank industry, but from other industries. I have one more question from Fatmir. Somehow this question is much more for me or for Adel. Maybe also would like Korab to relate, but it's very good to mention. How long does it take the company to change? In corporate governance and now digitalization, things are moving fast and owners of businesses are afraid to accept changes. There is no willingness as well from companies to pay for consultancy. So you also concluded, okay, as Fatmir is a friend of mine, I can also continue with explanations in another occasion, but Korab, I would like you at least to give your point of view, and then I will maybe, or Adel, relate to this readiness of companies to change when it comes to, let's say, being more transparent and thus also more accountable and using digitalization for those purposes. So how do you see from inside? Is there any resistance of either owners or management to change or adopt on also situations which are externally caused?
I would say for sure it's when the company is smaller, so the impact of the shareholder, of the owner, is more bigger, and as soon as the company is increasing and getting more bigger and bigger, so for sure the impact of the shareholders or of the owners is more smaller, because it is impossible to deal with everything during the same time. So us as a company, so we are finally we have agreement with IFC to implement the corporate governance now. So we are in the project since November of 2019 that we are working with IFC to start with corporate governance. So we start with some things, and we are in the way to implement. And I would like to to thank Erik and Eriola for very good impact in our way in implementing of the corporate governance. So how I see from inside, for sure, we are in the. It's not impossible to change, so we are changing every day. I'm in the company 70 years in the company, so the changes are very big in this way. So in the way of changing the decision making between the shareholder or the owner and the management team. So in my point of view, it's not impossible, but it's impossible, and I think in a very short time we are going to make also some more changes together with this project with IFC and the corporate governance.
Great. And I can also relate from my perspective that the awareness of companies, local companies, is really increasing when it comes to the needs of adopting to new trends and to new challenges. And as I'm very often mentioning, there is more and more perspective of the company on looking at the mirror rather than only looking at the window. So it's more and more companies are trying to look at themselves when it comes to the facing the challenges and the increasing the capabilities, their own, the internal capacities, the knowledge. And yes, definitely there is also increase of awareness thus to involve external consultants on helping them to, let's say, face those new challenges rather than trying to figure out themselves. So definitely it, and as you, Fatmir, may know even more than us on the sector that you were dealing for such a long time, it's not going easy, especially older generations are reluctant to the changes, but with the new generations, either of the family businesses or with the new entrepreneurs that knows how the trends are, I think that, again, I'm mentioning the awareness of the need for the change inside the companies and adopting new standards and best practices together with compliance, which is very important, and it's getting more and more obvious that it's part of the risk you have to deal with when you deal with your company. Companies are moving forward and becoming, let's say, more competitive, not only for local but also for international markets. So I don't have any other questions. If there are anyone who would like to add something that were not questioned, Adel, I would like you to hear again, either for closing words or if any need also adding any aspect or any question to our guests.
Thank you very much, Visar. Well, I would like to thank everyone for a really great discussion, and I think especially the last question was very relevant. How long it takes to improve the corporate governance and what it takes actually. And today we have discussed to what extent it is important, especially when a company faces the crisis, unforeseen crisis. And here I would like to add what Korab said and what you, Visar, also mentioned, that actually working on the corporate governance improvement is an endless process. I don't know whether it's good or bad news, but as we usually say, it's not a destination. Of course, the whole process is a journey. And we agree and we confirm that additional expenses and cost might require along this process. But in the meantime, every little step towards better system, better corporate governance system takes the company, further to the creating the system which would help to the full, safe, and successful extent achieve its strategic goals. And this is very important. And I really liked the definition of corporate governance, which Erik shared. Thank you, Erik, that this is the system or ecosystem which actually helps you to understand and to take you where you actually would like to be in the short term, mid-term, or long-term run. And talking about the little steps, I also would like to say and recommend that there is no need to invent the wheel. Everything is out there. There are like tons of materials, tons of tools, and really instrumental tools which can help you to start this process without even bringing the external consultants. So, for example, a while ago, IFC has developed the corporate governance scorecards. Now we call them environmental, social, and corporate governance scorecards. So this is a very easy, extremely easy tool with a list of questions which would help to self-assess the current state of the ESG practices and policies in the company. And that could be the starting point, towards that exciting but long journey. So thank you so much. And I would like to invite maybe Erik or Eriola or Korab to say any final words and to add to this very important discussion. If not, then that's it from my side. And I also would like to mention that we are able to do this really great events thanks to our donor, SECO, the government of Switzerland. And we would like to thank you, our donor, for this opportunity. And thank you once again, our partner institution, Recura, for organizing this really great event. So please, Erik, or Eriola, Korab, if you would like to add something.
Here in the studio, I get these negative. I think that from us, that would be all. If Erik has something to add, please add. Otherwise, thank you, Adele, also for, let's say, making possible together with us to organize this event. A bit, to be honest, from my side, a bit stressful, trying to sort out both physical and virtual presence. I think that it went well. We had over 30 also visitors and companies, and again this workshop or virtual session was recorded, so at least myself and a lot of our clients, we will go through it again, because there were some very useful information, suggestions, and guidance which can be used in our everyday work and life.
Visar.
Yes.
Visar, I think it was more stressful for Erik and myself, because we are in that locked Zoom space, and unfortunately, we're not part of you in the studio. And
but
you guys look really cool.
But you both look beautiful, so don't worry about that. So you will see it on when you go through it as a recorded one. Thank you very much.
So hopefully next time with COVID,
yes,
which will gone, and we will meet all together, and we will bring Erik to Kosovo for the first time.
We'll make sure.
Inshallah.
We'll make sure. Thanks a lot. So bye-bye to you there. Thanks again to my guests here, and I'm looking forward to see you in another occasion.